post-secondary options, conservatorships, and today, transition tools and resources for professional growth. So today we are grateful to have experts here to share with us everything that we need to know about the best practices and resources available to us as transition educators. So here to take on this very important task are Dr. Mary Morningstar and Debbie Flores. These two are the transition gurus. Basically, anyone and everyone in the transition world seems to admire these two. So we're very fortunate to have them with us. First, we have Dr. Mary E. Morningstar. She's a professor in special education at Portland State University and co-director of the Career and Community Studies program, which is a fully inclusive post-secondary education program for youth with intellectual disabilities. But that's not all. She's also director of the Transition Coalition, which is a national center offering online, hybrid, and in-person professional development and resources, which I think we'll hear more about today. And she currently co-directs the National Assistance Center on Transition, the Collaborative. And co-presenting is Debbie Flores. She is a research project specialist for the Transition Coalition, and she has over 40 years of experience in the field of special ed. Before retiring, she held various positions ranging from special ed teacher, department chair, transition coordinator for her school district, and Missouri transition specialist. As a transition coordinator, she was actively involved with interagency collaboration, community-based employment, and Transition Coalition's self-study program. For the past 5 years, she has worked as a self-study trainer for the Transition Coalition. Before I hand it over, like our other webinars, this will be recorded, and if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature, and there should be some time at the end to get them answered. Timing-wise, we should be wrapped up by about 2 o'clock, and in the last few minutes, we'll post a link in the chat like we do every seminar to the 5-question survey asking for your feedback. Lastly, thank you all for being here today, and with that, I will turn it over to Mary and Debbie.
Thanks so much, Anne. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm going to just post in the chat. This is a link to a Google Docs that will have all of the links for the presentation and the activity that we're going to do today. I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'll just share my big screen. So I hope you can see that. We've already done, thank you, Anne, for the really nice overview and introduction. Let me go on full blown. But before I do that, let me just show you the tools that we'll be using today. So the link that we've shared with you in the chat, and I believe you should have had this already, it will take you to a one-pager where you can get all the rest of the resources. The slideshow, the handouts for today's presentation, as well as a scavenger hunt activity. It's going to look like this. It's just a Google Sheets that we'll spend most of our time just kind of doing a little bit of show and tell. So with that, I believe we have our first poll. I'm going to go on presentation mode. So I don't know, let's see, can I start the poll, Anne, or is that only something you can do? It's like maybe I can do it.
You can do it if you like, or we can go ahead.
Excellent. Nope. Okay, so we just are curious who's here today. Looks like there's 81 people who are logged on. And if you could just complete that poll in terms of, what your role is within your district or program. So it looks like I was thinking, Anne had mentioned that a lot of you are considered transition teachers, or I often call them coordinators. Looks like that is almost quite a few of you. I don't seem to be able to, oops, we're filling out the second one is 2, it looks like. We'll get to that one in just a little bit. So, can you all see the poll? Sometimes when I do a poll, you have to share it for you all to see the results. But perhaps I'll just go ahead and end it. It looks like a lot of you are filling out the second one, which is, what is your top concern? Maybe I'll just leave that running for a little bit. That is, if I end it, I wonder if we can put it back on.
Yeah, so you can hit the end button and then go ahead and
Okay.
hit share results, and then everyone will be
Okay.
able to see. A couple
Okay.
people added.
Okay, so it looks like the majority of you are transition folks. So that's really helpful for us to understand. And we'll come back to the second one in just a little bit. That'll give those of you who were not able to answer it more time. So I've already mentioned this where you can find our resources and materials. And what we're going to do today in terms of today's takeaways is we're going to share information with you about NTAC-C and the Transition Coalition. But more importantly, we want you to have some understanding of transition-related evidence-based practices and predictors. Really, part of this is to share resources so that you can implement transition-focused strategies, and then to share effective transition practices that you learned about. So we're hoping as we go through this, we'll do a little bit of show and tell. You'll have a chance to do a scavenger hunt, and then we'll share with each other what we found was most useful. There's a couple of folks in the chat. Okay. So just briefly, we will also go into more detail about these two, but one of the things we did want to share was the NTAC, the collaborative. So this is a brand new grant project. It involves a whole bunch of different universities and entities around the country. It really is a combination of the old National Technical Assistance Center on Transition and the former WINTAC, which was the Workforce Investment Technical Assistance Center. So it has a wealth of materials and resources on it. You'll have a chance to explore it in a little bit. We just wanted to get out front the importance of this new collaborative. And then the other really important website is the Transition Coalition. So this is something that I've been involved with from the beginning. Debbie's been actively engaged in it, both when she was a transition teacher coordinator and now that she works with us. So it's designed to provide professional development strategies, tools, resources, and materials. We really created it for secondary special educators and transition stakeholders. We'll also explore it, but there's a tremendous amount of tools and resources that we've tried to create so that they're user-friendly. So I know you've spent a lot of time. It sounds like you've had a really good set of speakers and activities associated with the Transition Institute. So for some of you, this is just really a reorientation of why effective practices and predictors are so prominent in our discussions as transition stakeholders and why they're important. I think first of all, it's part of our federal legislation, whether you're a special educator and thinking about transition from the IDEA, or if you're a vocational rehabilitation counselor, thinking about it from the Workforce Investment Opportunities Act. And also it's written into, if you're just a general ed teacher, it's written into the, oh, now I can't remember what that acronym stands for. I think it's Every Student Succeeds Act. They all talk about scientific, research-based or evidence-based and promising practices. So there's a real emphasis on, if we're investing our time and energy with students, we should be doing things that we find are most effective. And I'd say particularly during the secondary school years, students and students with disability in particular, we just don't have time to waste on trying something out that we don't know is a proven effective approach. So as you're designing, as IEP team members, you'll be designing those transition services that are the practices and predictors. We want those to be more likely to help students achieve their post-school goals. And then also for program improvement. So the predictors, I'll go over this in a little bit, but it can help you to evaluate the quality of your overall transition program. So the way we like to divide up, EBPPs, or practices versus predictors, is the practices are what you do with students. So it's how the strategies and interventions you're using impact at the student level. The predictors of post-school success are the more programmatic. So it's like your school-based program, what the district is involved in, and also at the state level. So an example of a predictor might be inclusion in general education. That's not really an intervention. It's something we as special educators can support for students. And we know students who are included in general education are more likely to have employment and post-secondary educational outcomes once they're out of school. So it really is a way to drive positive post-school outcomes. If you're worried about what's happening with the students that you support, and I know all of you are probably covering a wide range of students, it may be the evidence-based practices you're using are not, or the practices you're using are not evidence-based. Or it could be you have a program that was developed 20 years ago and it's just plain out of date, and you're using strategies that are no longer considered reliable for leading to post-school change. Another way to think about it, and so this is a little test for you all, you can post to the chat. So I have a picture of a high school and I have a picture of a teacher and a student. So high school, is the focus in high school in terms of the definition, is it a predictor or a practice? So which one do you think it is? If we're looking, if the focal point is school programs, is that a predictor or a practice? Great, okay, so Janice was the first one, the fastest typer in the group, and she's correct. So just again, a predictor is those in-school experiences, the systems, the programs, the general practices that we know are critical for students to be successful. So when you're working directly with students, we know that that is what? What's that called? Practice or a predictor? Who's the first one off the gate on this? Thank you. Yes, thank you, Maria. It is the practices, those instructional strategies and curricula that we know help students develop specific skills. So whether it's academic in nature, or it's work-based learning skills, or it's self-determination, those are what distinguishes these two. Both are critical, but one is really student-directed and the other is more programmatic. This is helpful for some of you because some of you did in the poll say you were special education teachers. So you're more likely to focus directly on students, where others of you are transition, I believe you call them transition teachers or coordinators. You may do more that is program level in terms of setting up work-based learning for your students. That would be a predictor. And then finally, what I just want to talk about, and this is really important in this day and age, is in addition to thinking about evidence-based practices and predictors, we want to start to consider an assets-focused approach. So the problem that we've had, I think, over the last many years, decades within special education, is it is framed as a deficit model. We identify what the disability is, what's wrong with that student, and then try to remediate it or change that behavior. We don't often, and I think there is a shift, the barometer is shifting towards considering bringing in assets. So what are the personal, familial, and community assets that we can use to promote those predictors of post-school success? So how do we take an asset-driven approach? I know you, in one of your prior sessions, you were doing mapping activities, community mapping activities, and that's a great way to start considering the assets of your individual school communities. And then we also want to be able to embed more culturally sustaining practices for our students, really understanding the intersectionality of race and disability. They really go hand in hand in terms of how they intersect, and then the double impact that has on their outcomes, and then really working to promote self-determination. So shifting this into a more asset-focused approach is really important in our work, probably in the next 5 years, to get this down really solid. So the other term I'm just going to use, and then we'll stop talking about terms, and that is effective practices. So this can be a wider range of practices. The evidence-based are often, they have a really strong research behind it. And there's usually a criteria of when you tip the balance from research-based to evidence-based. I think what's really important about the definition of effective practices is that we are talking about a teaching method that is high quality, that there's some research behind it. So whether it's been a proven evidence-based practice or it's promising, what a promising practice means is that there's some research behind it, but we haven't gotten it to the quality level of evidence. So, but what we don't want to do is just use something that you've heard about, unless you have some understanding of its level of effectiveness. So, and we're going to get into quite a bit in just a little bit of resources, many of which are to help you look for effective practices. And so how do you select the one that you think might be successful? When we talk about self-determination, we know there's several published curricula that are proven to be effective. There's probably a lot of curricula out there that have no evidence of effectiveness. So first, how do you know the difference? And then how do you decide which among the curriculum you might choose to use for your students? And that's where you really want to consider both the assets that you bring to the table and then the context. So what types of students are you working with? Are they students with significant cognitive disability or students with emotional and behavioral disability? The type of curriculum and instruction you would use surrounding self-determination may look substantially different. So you want to consider that when you're deciding which ones to choose. What resources are available? We're going to share with you a lot of resources that are essentially free, which is great. And it helps build your toolkit of effective and evidence-based practices and predictors that are free. So that may be really important. Just because you purchase something doesn't necessarily mean it's effective. So looking at what resources are available, what you already have in your building or in your program that you can share is essential. And then knowing your setting and your context. If you're in a rural, remote school district, some of the curriculum that's more focused on a suburban or urban setting may not be appropriate, and it may not resonate with your students if the examples are all based on another geographic location. So thinking about the setting and context is also really essential as you make decisions as practitioners around effective practices. And then lastly, can you adapt an evidence-based practice? I know when I was teaching, and even today, I tend to I want to know what somebody else has already come up with. And then I might want to change it a little bit to make it fit my students' needs. And so, nobody's telling you have to do it lockstep the way it's designed, because that's part of our role as professionals, right? That we can make professional decisions about what's working and what's not working. But you do want to be careful, because if you go too far afield from a particular intervention, then you may not see the same student outcomes as if you had followed that intervention without adapting it. So it's really important to monitor progress. You know, how you collect data when you're working with a new practice is essential. And then you also need to think about the intended audience. If it's materials that was designed for students with learning disability, the chance that it's going to work for students with intellectual disability may or may not be sufficient. So just keeping these decision rules in mind as you're thinking about resources that you have available to you. So for the next part of this presentation, really the rest of our time together, except for a little bit at the end, let's see, how am I doing? Well, maybe not too bad. We have designed the second poll. So if you've already filled out that poll, that's great. Using the taxonomy for transition programming. And we've kind of just asked you to identify what's your biggest concern among the 5 buckets or the 5 domains of transition, whether it's student-focused planning, and you can see some of the what we mean by that in terms of IEP development, student participation, planning strategies, whether it's family engagement, whether it's student development, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we've organized the scavenger hunt for you, because there's a lot of skill development in the domain of student development, interagency collaboration, and then program structures. So these are all the ways that you've organized, set up, planned, and allocated resources related to transition. So the poll that we've shared with you, I'm going to post it back up again. So if you didn't have a chance, I'm going to relaunch the poll. But what I want you to do is pay attention to question number 2. Oh, I did. When I relaunched it, it cleared it out. So everybody take a moment and identify what is your biggest concern right now for you in terms of your program. And we probably won't have time to do a scavenger hunt of all 5 areas. And that's where we want to know what's most important to you, because we'll start there. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to do that. Grab some water. I think, Debbie, while you're up next, and then I'll just quickly run and get some water.
Okay,
Okay, so let's see, we've got, still have
not halfway.
about halfway. I think some of you in the chat, I noticed some of you were saying you weren't able to get to the poll. You might be on a your phone, or I think there were a few comments of not being able to get to the poll, or the submit button didn't work. That's unfortunately a technology skill that's beyond me. Let's see, we got another chat message. Okay. We have one person who really can't decide, but luckily for you, Janice, student development also includes some student-focused planning in terms of self-determination. So, and it looks like the poll has kind of slowed down, even though, let's see, 30, we have about 50% of you who have completed it. Oh, let me share. Looks like, yeah, most of you have stopped. If you're able to, okay. So it looks like our number 1 choice, the one we'll start with, is student-focused planning. I'm just going to take notes because the poll will disappear. And then student development. And then, well, it's almost a tie between family involvement, interagency, and program. So maybe we can get to a couple more, but definitely family involvement. And then interagency. Okay, great. Did I share these results yet? Yeah. Did I just? Yes. Now I'm sorry. I thought I had clicked the button share results. So now you too can see those results.
Great.
Oh, this was the poll slide.
There was the poll. There
Oh,
was,
good. That was to remind us to do it. I'm glad I did it.
yeah.
Okay.
So what we're going to do today and right now for the rest of most of the time is, first off, I just want to thank you all for being here. And I just know, and Mary and I are aware that there is so much information out there. It's hard to know where do you go and where do you start. So what we have put together is a list for you, and you have this information and you can use this and share it, and it's yours to have. But we took some major websites that we go to and depend upon to get lots of information from. And we wanted to just give you an overview of those websites first. And then we're going to talk about how we've set up this particular document so that it's useful to you. And we're going to give you time to actually go and look at some things. So first off, if you have, it might be helpful for you to have access to this if you can. And then Mary, I'll just let you start out with the first
Okay.
one.
So just, the rest of our time together is really focused on clicking around on this particular spreadsheet. So I'm going to do one more time. I'm going to post the link to the actual Google spreadsheet into the chat one more time if that was not available to you earlier. The other thing we can do is we probably should have included the URL. So if for some reason you cannot actually get to this spreadsheet itself for any reason, we'll still give you so you can get into these websites. So I'll start with the first one, and some of these you may be familiar with and others you may not. So this is really an opportunity for you to learn and to sort of keep building your toolkit. And it looks like it's 1:30 right now. So we have exactly a half an hour. So that'll be plenty of time to get through at least 3 of the websites. So what we decided we would do first is just do a very quick, so you can see each of the websites. I probably should have pulled them all up sooner. So the Zarrow Center for Learning Enrichment, this is out of the University of Oklahoma. It was started by Jim Martin. Many of you know him. They've developed a really excellent new transition assessment and goal generator assessment. So if you're not familiar with that, you might spend some time looking around in that. And then we will share with you links. We've sort of curated just some of the materials available, but we'll share, there's lots of links down here that are super helpful for you if you're not familiar. I think everything on the Zarrow Center is free. So that's really important. And then Debbie, you're going to do the next one.
And Mary talked about the Transition Coalition website. That's how Anne connected with us from the very beginning. And the Transition Coalition website, as Mary said, it's professional development resources for mainly our secondary transition folks, but also there's information for VR, counselors, families, all around. It's all about transition, and it goes from process to best practices, and like Mary talked about, effective practices. And as you can see, there's training, tools, resources. We also, if you haven't already, we'd encourage you to join our listserv so that you can get updated information about what's going on and upcoming events that are happening. We also have modules and mini modules and do-it-yourselves, and it's just, it's cool stuff. And we'll show you some specific things in just a moment too.
And then we've already talked briefly about NTAC. And once again, for right now, the way the site, it's pretty bare bones. We're working on a new site that will be available to us by the end of May. But you can get to a tremendous number of resources by going up to the WinTAC or the NTAC site itself, I'm gonna try to make these a little bit bigger. Make that just so we can see it a little bit. And there's all sorts of resources, both for pre-ETS and transition training and webinars. So there's a lot of good information on this site.
The next one is I hope you all are familiar with the I Am Determined. It's the goal of the I Am Determined website is to support educators, families, and especially students with disabilities to be self-advocates and to succeed in life. There are youth forums, there's specific resources on helping individuals do a self-directed IEP, and just how to use those resources so that they are speaking up for themselves and being a true advocate for themselves. And we will, like I said, look at that a little bit closer in just a few minutes.
I'm sure that because you all are in California, we couldn't be remiss in making sure, if you're not familiar with the California Transition Alliance, I'll open up that one, but also the links on the California Department of Education site. There's some really good transition links there. And we just wanted to let you know, if you're not familiar with the California Transition Alliance, they have a tremendous number of resources, and there's a conference that happens every year, and just some really good materials and resources for you all in terms of guidance on transition. And then I was recently, you'll see the Shasta Careers Connections had a lot of really good career interest inventories that I think we've included in the search.
The next one is the ODEP, which is the Office of Disability Employment Policy, and this is part of funded by the U.S. Department of Labor. There's national and state policies. You can kind of see where you are and what's going on throughout the United States, but also there's great resources, free curriculum for helping students develop soft skills and prepare them for that workplace employment. And there's a wealth of information also on the ODEP site.
It's designed for federal policy, but it also includes, like, there's a curriculum some of you may be familiar with that Debbie will talk about in a little bit. Okay, so then VCU, what did I just do? There it is. This is again, the Virginia Commonwealth University Rehabilitation Research and Training Center. First of all, they have a whole ton of projects. Their existence is for work. They really started supported employment way back in the day. So they have projects. We're going to share, I think the ones that we shared the most with you is their Transition Innovations website, and then also the Autism Center for Excellence. But there's several other websites: employment of persons with intellectual and developmental disability. If you happen to be a job developer, you might be interested in Business Connection. So you'll get a chance to spend some time on that website as well.
And the last one we wanted to share with you is Think College. And Think College provides resources for educators and also families and students to think beyond high school, which is what transition is all about, to the opportunities that weren't possible just a few years ago for our students, especially those with intellectual disabilities. And so this is, like I said, there's resources here. You can look, there's a map of the United States that highlights where those colleges are that specialize in these programs for students, but also resources and information for students and families as they prepare for that post-secondary plan. So there is putting it all out there. And like we said, there's so much. So what we did is we took the taxonomies that we highlighted on the left, and you can see them. Now, what we did with student development is we actually split those up into, so that's your SD column that talks about student development. So if you want to specifically look for accommodations and supports, you want to specifically look for career and vocational curriculum, that's where we outline that also for you. So what we would like for you to do right now is the number one was student focused planning. And you can see that across there are links in which for each, pretty much each one except for ODEP, for student focused planning. And we would like for you to just take a few minutes to explore those and then share with us in the chat which one you've looked at and did you find it helpful for student focused planning. That's what we're going to do just right now. So just take your time to just go and look at what you would like to what looks good to you that you would like to explore.
Now, for some of you, you may be familiar with the Zaro Center, and this is the one I picked, the Student Directed Transition Planning, because it's this really cool curriculum that you can use pieces of. But there's lots of other things on here. So if you're familiar with this and you're like, oh, well, that's not very helpful to me, pick something else from the Zaro Center, or pick something from one of the other websites that you may not be familiar with. So we're going to probably give you, I think we planned on about 5 minutes, maybe 5 minutes for you all to look around. And so we'll give that time to you starting, let me set my timer, starting now. So just take a moment to look around and either use the link to what we have. That's probably the best way to get started, because we've kind of gone in and tried to help you get there, and spend some time finding a resource, look for something new. And then we do, oh, it's blurry. Okay, I'm not sure what that means. I guess this might be blurry, but you can download this yourself.
And Mary, while we're waiting, you can go get your drink of water.
Okay, thank you. I'll be right back. We have 4.5 minutes. Maybe I forgot about it. Countdown. You should have an online countdown timer. Oops. No, no, no. One countdown timer, that doesn't make sense to me.
And we want to let you know that this is not the only link to each one of these websites that deals with student focused planning. Just want to make that clear. This is just an example from each website a link for you. There's many, but we just wanted to give you an idea of where to start, an idea of what was out there and what was available.
So you have a little under 2 minutes left. I know we're not giving you enough time. This hopefully will get you motivated to come back to this chart when you have time.
And Barbara, thank you for putting in the chat things that have been helpful to you that you've used also, and that's very much appreciated.
So if you've found something that you think is helpful, go ahead, put that in the chat. We'll have a chance to talk a little bit about those, what you thought was most helpful. If you find something or you have something you use on a regular basis, then you could also put that link. So if you have the URL handy. Okay, so we did have a question from Jose. It looks like you're asking about resources that would be appropriate for students in the alternate curriculum. I think you will find a lot of the materials on the Zaro Center and on the I'm Determined website. There we go, there's your time, are absolutely appropriate for students with more significant disability, cognitive disability. Debbie, I don't know if you have something that, the link that you included to the I'm Determined is a little more focused on students with significant disability. But I would recommend, Jose, that you spend some time on those websites because they will include students. They have a lot of videos. They have a lot of video footage on their site. And that you can use for students with more significant disability. Oh, it looks like Dana, you found on the Think College website, the California, thank you. You've shared with us the California state and where those programs are located. Oh, a video and handout, Maria, CCR, what does it take to be college and career ready? I believe that's from the Transition Coalition website. Sounds awfully familiar to me. Great. So anybody else have anything else they'd like to share or any questions you have about student-focused planning and the resources we've been able to share with you? Oh yeah, the Me lesson plans and materials, great. Susan, that's a great suggestion. That's on the Zaro Center. The Zaro Center, one of the things that they were able to do is create and upload a lot of lessons. And these are, the Me lesson plans are evidence-based. They've also included their Choice Maker. These used to be lessons and curriculum for purchase that are now available at no cost. And they really focus on self-determination, choosing goals, setting goals, and taking action. And it cuts across education, employment, and personal goals. So a lot of the curriculum on the Zaro Center you'll find really helpful.
Another thing about the Transition Coalition website is we do also connect with other resources that maybe Intact has developed, the lesson plans from Intact, the collaborative that they have. We have other, it's not just our stuff, it's information and resources throughout. So, and the webinars that we have available and that we have done also give you connection and resources to there. So it's not just one or the, it's not just one thing, it's connecting with, and the toolkits that Intact has is are very helpful.
One thing you mentioned, Debbie, now of course I can't find the lesson plans when I need them. right away, but you can get to several they call lesson plan starters. Oh, here we go. So you look like within transition planning, so that's still this topic of student focused planning. If you're interested in employment, you can actually get to some student development skills, but I was thinking about self-determination. And then they have practice descriptors, but they also have free lesson plans. So they'll give you a little descriptor about a particular intervention. Well, this isn't the lesson plan. Anyways, on here, of course, in a pinch in front of all these people, I can't find what I'm looking for, but they have these great lesson plan starters. Okay, so it is, I can't believe it's already 10 to 2. So this one will give you a little bit more, you can choose, because the next highest domain was student development.
Right.
So all of you I know teach different types of kids, and you may be working with kids you're really interested in accommodations and students with high incidence disabilities. So you may want to look across this row in terms of what's possible to find related to accommodations and college and career readiness. High school diploma decision-making guide, somebody mentioned that. Or you may be interested in life skills. And so you could spend a little bit of time looking across this row and seeing what's available around student-led IEPs. Or you might be really interested in employment. So you have a wide range of skills that you're each dealing with. So why don't you just take another 5 minutes? And now that I have my countdown timer, we'll just hit that start and just spend a little time on this web on looking around at materials you're most interested in. Next time we do this, Debbie, we're going to have music. I'm glad you all are finding this a helpful activity.
Well, it's nice to have a place to start and not have to spend all your time searching and just have a direction on where to go. And then, of course, it turns into more and more, but at least this will get you started and you're not spending all your time just trying to figure out. And all of these are practices that we would call effective practices.
We have about 3 minutes left to look around. And Yvette, it looks like you raised your hand. I don't think on the webinar you can unmute your microphone, but if you have a question, oh, the information is blurry. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think if you download the Google Sheet yourself, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's when you're sharing your screen, when we're looking at it, we can't see it perfectly, but the link that Mary posted in the chat is what we should be clicking on, and then look at it on your own screen, and it shouldn't be blurry.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of what
Christina.
I was thinking. I'll put the link in the chat one more time. This is a link to this spreadsheet. so that you have access to it. And this also, we're not going to pull it down. So now that you have a link to this, you can come back to it afterwards. And it looks like many of you are on the actual website. It looks like there's quite a lot of you who are linking to it now. So so bookmark it.
And you could share this with families and students and others. It's
Mhm.
there. And like someone said, yes, it's nice. Things are now free and we don't have to buy everything. And
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. It can be hard when you see things that look like comprehensive curriculum and it costs money and you really don't know if there's evidence behind it. I think that's the really important thing. Oh, yay. Prisya said she's going to use it with something you found with the student. Excellent. That's what we love to hear. So there's about 1 minute left for this activity. We do have a few other slides at the end that we want to make sure we get to. So did anybody find anything really interesting that you didn't know about before from one of the domains of student development? Yeah, there's a lot of webinars related to transition planning. The ones that are from the California Transition Alliance are some really good webinars. That's what, and those are going to be blessed by the State Department. So, the information in there has been approved by the Department of Education. And I don't know if any of you got down to vocational assessment, but that Shasta Center, the career interests, inventories and assessments, there's a nice collection of assessments that you can use. Oops, there goes our time. Okay, so sounds like there's lots of opportunities for you to continue. I know we're down to about 5 more minutes, and we certainly don't want to take up your time. And so just one last, if anybody has something, a resource they found that they're interested in sharing, go ahead and put that in the chat. And make sure you don't lose the link to the resource topic so that you can have access to this in the future. Okay. Anything else, Debbie, that you want to add?
no, I think you just wanted to get the other things.
A few more slides, yeah. I had a few more that I wanted to cover because I know that for some of you may be, I know a lot of you are interested in materials that you can use right now within your program or your district or your classroom. But I also wanted to just share with you, this is something that it's on the Transition Coalition website. We created it last year. If you're a professional development provider, so if you're someone who, like you're a transition coordinator, and maybe you work in a couple of high schools and sometimes you do some of your, what professional development, I don't know if you call it a community of practice or a professional learning community. We've created this train, which if you click on the link or you go onto our website, and it gives you a whole bunch of resources that you can use as a professional development provider. It gives you resources you can use, and then also ways that you can extend that learning when you're meeting with a group of teachers or working online in a particular activity. So it gives you not only good resources to use for professional development, but also then ways you can extend that learning for your group that you're most concerned about. So it's a helpful resource, has a little webinar, 5-minute webinar that tells you about the product. The other thing, and I know you've had training from DCDT folks, the Division of Career Development and Transition folks, but when I was looking on their website, I found some really helpful resources. And so once again, particularly this return from transition in the cloud. So these are kind of things to use, including one called Don't Break the Bank, free transition education tools provided by the Zaro Center. So if you want more information and you're not familiar with these resources, I encourage you to take a moment to go to DCDT. And then the last thing I wanted to do was mention to you about 2 certificates. So if you're interested in formal training, if you're interested in an online master's program or a certificate, if you've just moved into your role as a transition teacher or a transition coordinator, or even if you're just a secondary educator and now you're working on a master's degree, these are 2 programs, University of Kansas and the University of Massachusetts in Boston. They're fully online. They've been accredited by the Division of Career Development and Transition. So I really wanted to share with you that these are 2 programs. They're national in scope, and they give you a comprehensive, systematic training, either leading to a certificate. I think the Boston program is a certificate, and the University of Kansas is a full master's degree that's focused on secondary transition. So we definitely wanted to share that information with you. And I never get through all my slides in a presentation. This is the first time. Debbie, it must be working with you that kept us on track. So you have our information. You have more information about NTAC, the collaboration. And if there's any final questions, looks like there's a survey that Anne wants you to fill out that's linked in the chat. I'm sure you're familiar with doing that. And just wanted to say thank you for your time. And oops, my yoga girl just came on. So that means it's time to do a little stretch. Stop sharing my screen.
I saw that. Thank you, Mary and Debbie. That was awesome. I think this chart is wonderful. I like how organized it is, and it's great. So, and the first link, that Google Doc, thank you guys for putting it together that way. Sometimes it gets difficult for some of the other webinars before we were doing that, where people were clicking on wanting the copies of the PowerPoint. So now it's just a 1-pager. So that was great. So thank you guys for doing that. So hopefully everyone.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
With
Hopefully
us
everyone
that
benefited from today. And if there's any questions, we can look here in the Q&A and see if anybody has questions here in the next little bit of time.
Great.
Okay, I guess not. So next week, May 6th is our next seminar, and that is all about autism and supporting our students with autism spectrum disorders. So we hope you can tune in for that one. And like Mary said, the link's in the chat to do the survey. And just another big thank you to Mary and Debbie for taking time to enlighten us all about different tools and resources. And I think whoever enrolls in one of the online master's programs that you shared will win a free DOTS t-shirt on me. Just because I think it would be exciting for someone in our group to do one of the master's programs. I wish I had known about it when I was choosing myself. So thank you for sharing everything.
Great.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Well, thank you all. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording at this point. Thank you all. If I can find the button.